I rise today to talk about an extremely qualified person who has been nominated to be the next director of the Central Intelligence Agency. I just left a meeting with Gina Haspel, who is a woman who has spent her entire career at the Central Intelligence Agency, protecting our country. Over the decades, she's been in the field a number of times, been in a number of dangerous situations. She's been an analyst. She's been in leadership. She's currently the deputy director of the Central Intelligence Agency. By the way, she's the first woman who has ever been deputy director of this agency. Of course, she'd be the first woman director should she be confirmed. Had the opportunity to talk to her about a lot of issues, including the morale at the CIA and how people feel about her being the director. As you can imagine, folks over there are extremely excited about this, one of their own, someone who they know and trust. They understand that she has their interests at heart. I think it would be terrific for that agency to have someone of her capability. She would be only the second director in the history of that agency that came up through the ranks. I also went down to what's called the SCIF, which is a place where you can look at classified information. And this week I had the opportunity to review her background, not just what's available publicly, but also what's in a classified form. Suffice it to say, I was very impressed. So I have spent my time looking at her record, looking at her background, talking to her personally, talking to other people in the intelligence community to understand the impact she would have on the men and women of that agency. And I can just tell you, I truly believe that she is not only qualified, but she may be the most qualified person you could think of to run this agency, and she'll be good for the agency. I have the opportunity when I go around the world to make visits on behalf of the Foreign Relations Committee. I'm a member of the Foreign Relations Committee, to meet with CIA personnel. I was in Ukraine and in the Czech Republic, in Germany over the Easter break. I was with our troops on Easter and then had the opportunity to meet with some of the CIA employees overseas. I can just tell you, you would be so proud if you had the opportunities I've had to meet with some of these people and talk to them about what they're doing every day to help protect us, and the risks they take every day to help protect us on behalf of our national security. And who better to provide the President of the United States with the sort of intelligence analysis needed to deal with so many challenges that we face around the world than someone who has been in the trenches, who has been one of those people out in the field, like those folks that I've met with as recently as last month. Someone who's got this deep understanding of intelligence operations. And by the way, she's not political at all. Not a Republican, not a Democrat. She's a career professional. And what better agency than the Central Intelligence Agency to have someone who is a consummate professional? By the way, I believe that's one reason she has such strong support from former CIA directors. You've probably seen this, but former secretaries of state, former CIA directors have come forward to support her. It includes Republicans and Democrats. The list includes Leon Panetta, as an example, John Brennan and James Clapper, who were all intelligence leaders in the Obama administration. They've come out in support of Gina Haspel. It's easy to see why she's so widely supported. And let me just share one quick account that I've read about. She's probably too modest to talk about, but one of her assignments was in a difficult part of the world, a dangerous part of the world. She was the station chief there. She got news that there were two senior al-Qaeda associates linked to the embassy bombings in Kenya and Tanzania. You remember those horrible bombings? And that they were on their way to the country where she was stationed. With that little bit of information, she went to work. And as a result of her swift actions and her dedication and intensity, she actually went full-time, 24/7. They say she slept on her office floor to the extent she slept at all. She was able to determine that these terrorists had gone to a particular hotel, was able to track them there, and after a firefight, they were apprehended. These two evil men who had killed so many people in Africa through terrorist acts were stopped. But as important, their computers were seized, and their computers revealed the next terrorist plot that they were planning. Lives were saved. And Gina Haspel was awarded by George H.W. Bush Award for Excellence in Counterterrorism. So she's received a lot of honors like that throughout her career. But I say that story just to give you a sense of who this woman is, because I think as you hear the debate in this chamber and talking back and forth, sometimes we forget the fact that these people do work in dangerous situations to protect us. And she's been in situations where gunshots have been fired upon her vehicle, as an example. She's one of those people who, all these years, has been out there serving us. And now for us not to support her, I think would be the wrong thing to do. I look forward to the confirmation. It'll be another first for her, first woman deputy director, first woman director, but that's not why she's doing it. She's doing it, as she told me today, because she's a patriot. She's from Kentucky, right across the river from where I live in Cincinnati, Ohio. And she grew up as a kid who believed in patriotism and service and protecting our country, and she has devoted her life to this. One final point that I hope some of my colleagues who might be listening or still undecided might think about. You know, this is an incredibly dangerous and volatile world that we live in right now. Unfortunately, we face a lot of dangers. I just had the chance to talk to Gina Haspel about what's happening with regard to Iran and Syria and the latest news with regard to the conflict between Israel and Syria. And we had a chance to talk at some length about what's happening with regard to the Russian influence in Eastern Europe, particularly what's going on the eastern border of Ukraine at the line of contact where I was a month ago, and some of the challenges we now have with getting good intelligence with regard to what's happening in that part of the world. We talked about issues relating to North Korea and the recent return of these 3 hostages. And I can just tell you, without going into detail, this woman knows the world, and there would be no on-the-job training. She's been deputy director for 18 months, but long before that, she had a grasp of what was going on around the world. She knows these people around the world. She obviously knows her senior leadership team there well. She is a woman who is prepared to step forward at a time when we cannot afford mistakes, when we need to have somebody who has that experience. And I would just say to the families we all represent, you know, we're charged with voting up here, but ultimately we're charged with representing millions of Americans, each of us in our respective states. And think about their safety and think about who you would want in that position. And again, I would challenge my colleagues to think of somebody who's better qualified. I know there's some concerns raised by some of my colleagues about actions that were taken by the CIA immediately after 9/11. One, we have to all put ourselves in that mindset after 9/11 and the great dangers that we faced. And certain decisions were made that were considered absolutely legal. In fact, the congressional leadership, the so-called Big Eight, including the Intelligence Committee, Democrats and Republicans, were all read into it and knew what was going on and were approving of it. In fact, some would say that some of the members of Congress even pushed for the CIA to do more in terms of interrogating people and getting information that could then reveal plots that were being planned and to save lives. So I understand there's new thinking about that. And Gina Haspel herself has said in her testimony yesterday that she has evolved in her thinking on that. But I would ask those same members who are talking about what happened back in the early 1990s to think about what's happening today. And again, to wonder who could be more qualified. By the way, if she's not qualified, that means that a number of other people, such as anybody in a senior leadership role at the CIA who happened to have been there during that time, would not be qualified. Including, they must think, John Brennan would not be qualified, who got a large bipartisan vote in this body to be the director of the CIA, even though he was in a higher leadership role at that time at the CIA. So again, I hope she will be confirmed. I think she will be confirmed, but I do hope that any colleagues who are wondering which way to go will think about where we are today. It is a dangerous and volatile world. We do need somebody who has that experience, knowledge, and background and wisdom that comes with years of experience, born of actual experience in the field. And to have this smart, decent, well-qualified woman not be confirmed, I think would be not just bad for the CIA, but bad for our country, and indeed bad for what all of us hope for, which is a more peaceful world, and one where we do have the kind of intelligence we need to be able to keep that peace. Thank you, Mr. President.